I think that it's just important to have people to have that dialogue and to remember that life gives you that second chance. And it's really important also not to compare yourself all the time to the people around you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 3 of the podcast Cafe. I'm your host, Harshit, and today we have with us Ms. Aparna Piramal Raje. She is a writer, a columnist, a motivational speaker on leadership, business, design, and mental health. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Hi, Harsha. Thank you for having me.
Ma'am, so to begin with, if you could please tell us about your latest book, Chemical Khichdi, what it revolves around, what inspired you to write the book?
So, Chemical Khichdi is about my experiences of learning to live and thrive with a serious mental health condition called bipolar disorder. This is a condition which takes one very high and very low. So, there are mood swings, but there are extreme mood swings. So, it's not like the
Right.
normal mood swings that we have on an everyday basis where, we
Mm-hmm.
just feel happy or sad or angry, but
Right.
very extreme mood swings.
Okay.
And so I've been living with this for 20 years, ever
Oh,
since
goodness.
I was in my 20s. And it's so this book is about that journey, but it also has a lot of tips and suggestions for how anyone can enhance their mental wellness. So
Right.
it's really about how they can learn to hack their mental health, whether you're somebody who's got a mental health illness or you just want to improve your mental health and
Right.
wellness in general, or you're looking after someone, that is it's a book for that reason. And
Okay.
what inspired me to write it was really that I've been living with this for a long time, and I just
Mm-hmm.
thought that I had come to some insights and learnings, and
Right.
this would be useful for other people. So yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. That is a long period of time dealing with such a illness. But yeah, hats off to you for dealing it with in a positive manner. Okay. So, ma'am, depression has recently been around, and how can one recognize and acknowledge that they are depressed? What can be the symptoms? How can one acknowledge that they're depressed?
So I think of, feeling depressed as something like being on a spectrum. I think that there are moments of sadness that all of us experience from time to time.
Right.
There are times then of when we are feeling mild depression, but then there's also serious depression, which is called major depressive disorder. So I think that there's a spectrum, and we're probably all on that spectrum at some point, depending at what's going on with our lives. So I
Right.
think that what's important to understand is that you should see if there are real changes in behavior in someone. So for example, is there a change in sleep? Is there a change in energy level? Is there a change in appetite? They could be eating too much or too little. Is there a change in their overall attitude? Are they feeling a sense of hopelessness? I think
Right.
the way I look at it is that it's really important to see if there's if there's a change for a long term basis, like if it's going on for more than a few days, if it's going on for a
Right.
few weeks. And
Right.
that's the time when it's important to discuss. Having said that, I think if somebody is just going through a low phase, even on a daily basis, any good friend or family member should ask, hey, what's up with you? What's going on with you? Is there something you want to talk about? I think that's
Right.
something we should be doing very often.
Right. Right. Right, ma'am. Very well said. Because depression has been an illness, but people don't recognize it. What I feel is. Okay, so ma'am, in India, mental health, as we discussed, isn't given as isn't considered an important issue as a physical health is. and we often tend to ignore it. So, ma'am, what are your views about it? How you take it? And
Yeah, so I think it's not just in India. I think this happens in many parts of the world, really, that we
right,
often pay a lot of attention to physical health. But actually, as you just also talked about, depression is the number one cause of disability according to worldwide, according to the
right,
World Health Organization. So I think it's a pretty serious issue. I just think it's more discussion and conversation about it. People should not feel that if they have something that's troubling them emotionally or mentally, that this is something that's a reflection of their personality. This is just something that's happening to them. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them as a person or in terms of their character or their behavior. So if you hurt,
right,
if you injured your foot, you have a broken leg, then you shouldn't, you would never say that all of you is damaged. You would just say that your foot is damaged.
right,
So similarly, I think that if you have a mental health condition, it shouldn't be seen as your entire personality is damaged. It's just that your a part of you is feeling unwell. So I think to look at it, I think mental health should also be looked at through the lens of through the same lens of health, which today we're looking at it more through the lens of maybe identity or personality.
right, right, right. Ma'am, very well said. Okay, so ma'am, we often tend to, hear it from our elders that mental health wasn't back in their times. It has come up lately, or we often tend to hear these kind of things. Ma'am, how do you think this is right or wrong? Because there are a lot of perspective about, mental health and depression.
Well, I think it's really hard for me to comment on what was, there previously, but I think if you go back to literature and you see what people have been writing for centuries, people have been talking about things like depression. So I think these conditions have been there for a long time and they're probably just undiagnosed and
Right,
they've been untreated. And so I think that it's really important that these ill conditions, are diagnosed. And I just think that we didn't have the vocabulary back then to look at these things. I don't think that people, did not take their own lives earlier. I don't think that people were not, depressed earlier. I don't think. I think all of these conditions, and especially if you go back to literature and look at examples of writers who've been writing about these things, they've existed as long as humans have because they're just part of the human
right.
condition.
Right. Uh, Great. Ma'am, also, often when it comes to depression or, reaching out to your psychologist, people often people often compare you to a mad person, or, this has been a common ground in the society. So, what do you think? How can we improve this thing, a general mentality from the society?
Well, I think we have to remove those words from our vocabulary. We have to stop being so casual about the way that we say mad and crazy and pagal
Right,
and psycho. And we have to have a much more sensitive approach to these conditions. And we should start using words that say unwell, or maybe if somebody is acting in a reckless way, they're saying they're reckless, or
right.
rather than labeling and using these words which are very insensitive.
Right, 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 ma'am. Very well said. Okay, so ma'am, it is often said, and I quote, depression isn't dark rooms and crying. Sometimes it's getting up, going to work, smiling all day, doing little to nothing until it's time to go to bed. Having said this, the youth is one section of society who hesitate to share their problems. Ma'am, what do you suggest to the people seeking help for mental health?
Yeah, I think we should do more of it, frankly. I think that it shouldn't be the case that, only somebody with a severe mental health condition goes to a therapist. I think anyone can go to a therapist and talk to them. And it's always good to have somebody who's non-judgmental and who's willing to offer support. I think there are a lot of expectations of young people today from their family members, from society, from themselves.
Right,
And social media makes life quite difficult. So I think that for people who are in these situations, it's always good to have someone to talk to. You can
right,
talk to a professional, you can talk to somebody in your ecosystem, you can talk to somebody you trust. But I think it's really important to have someone to talk to because these are times that we live in where there are a lot of pressures and expectations.
right. Ma'am, at last, I'd like to ask you that the number of suicide rates are increasing, be it the pressure from studies, be it in the 11th, 12th, engineering college, medical colleges, or be it the pressure from the, the professional world. So how can we deal with it to to put in a sense of positivity, a sense of optimism? How can we do this? How can we motivate people? How can we look around people around us who are not very well? How can we help them out?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that, we're all going to live really long lives, and we're going to change the things that we do. And it's not the case that if there's just one thing that we want to do and we're not able to do that, that means that there's nothing else that we can do. So, for
Right,
example, if you want to become a doctor or an engineer and you're not able to achieve that, doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you option that you have in life. Or if you're in a relationship and it breaks up, that doesn't
right,
mean that that's the only relationship you're going to have in life.
right,
You're going to live a long life, and life gives you a second chance. And I think it's important to look at it from that point of view. Even if you're struggling financially, and these are the careers that want to that will help you financially, I think there are always other options that one can look at. And there are so many examples of people who might have failed when they were young, and then who've gone and gone on to have really successful careers. Even I have had so many failures in my life,
right,
when there were many things I wanted to do and I wasn't able to do them. But I think all of those failures have given me resilience. So I think that it's just important to have people to have that dialogue and to remember that life gives you that second chance. And it's really important also not to compare yourself all the time to the people around you, and to say that so
right,
and so is doing so much better, and they are doing really well academically, or they're doing really well professionally. And you just
right,
need to kind of at your own life very differently. So
right, right. Because we often tend to compare ourselves and then get depressed, right? Ma'am, pressure is one thing that, the life that, as we discussed, has a lot of pressure on us. How can we tackle pressure? Because, of course, you cannot put in your work side, but of course, we need to handle pressure in a better way. So, how do you do it, or how can we do it for a better life?
I think there are a couple of ways. I think, first of all, you must have outlets to relieve yourself of pressure. Okay. So that you're not studying all the time, you're not working all the time. There are other things and other hobbies, and find time, whatever it is, maybe even just once a week, once in 2 weeks, whatever it is you enjoy, whether it's sports, music, movies, reading, whatever thing that activities that you can do to take your mind off that, that is really important. Journaling is a really interesting way to talk about your emotions and to share your emotions, in
Right,
a way that helps you release them. But then the other thing that I look at is a slightly more philosophical attitude, which is to say that, look, you can only focus on the input. You can't
right,
really focus on the output. The output is never guaranteed.
yes,
And I mean, this is something that you would see in the Bhagavad Gita also, right? Which says that you don't go after the fruit, you just put in the efforts. And
right,
when you put in the efforts, the labor, the fruits will come. So you have to have this approach, which is saying that I always say that I try and be driven. I'm a very driven person. I want to achieve results, but I'm
right,
also detached, which is to say that if those results don't come, I will not be devastated. Or
right,
maybe they will take longer to come. Okay, maybe I don't achieve everything I want in 6 months, maybe it takes 1 year. But you're not totally, you're emotionally dependent on those results, and you're not devastated mentally if those results don't come. But you just put in your effort, and then sooner or later something or the other will happen.
right.
um
Okay. So, also, ma'am, any one quote or any one saying that you often follow in life in order to just keep going, as you say, ma'am, anything if you can share with us?
Yeah, so one quote one of my teachers, I think, had given me in school was, when you reach for the stars, you may not always end up with the stars, but you won't end up with a handful of mud either.
Right,
So you will get somewhere. That's one. And the other one that I really like is that the purpose of life is a life of purpose.
right,
So I think when you find your purpose, and your purpose is something that's bigger than yourself, it's bigger than just saying I want to go to engineering college, or I want to get a medical degree. Your purpose is a little bit more than that. Then you actually feel that you have a mission that's guiding you. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for speaking with us. Ma'am, I hope a lot of people find their answers in this episode. And thank you, ma'am, for being on the show to us. an absolute honor speaking to you and hosting you at the podcast cafe.
Okay, thank you so much, Harshit, for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.